Illinois taxpayers going to be paying $620 million additional for a new contract. Governor J.B. Pritzker announced with the state's largest state employee union, AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Some of you out there are AFSCME members. Would like to hear from you about this deal at 217-629-7970. But you have another contract that was agreed upon as well, and that's the contract with UPS. And I actually have a buddy of mine who works for UPS, and he messaged yesterday. He said after the show, because we did a segment about the UPS contract, after the show, he messaged me and said, we got a deal. And then I see the headline come through. He goes, it must have been about you talking about it on the air. I appreciate the confidence, but highly doubt that one. But yeah, get your calls in at 217-629-7970 is the phone number. But let's get to this contract deal with AFSCME. Governor J.B. Pritzker announcing the deal, the $620 million in additional costs. That's additional costs because it costs about $6 billion for all state employees in the state of Illinois for taxpayers to pay them to do work on behalf of the state. So it costs more than $6 billion. Now, the deal is a 4-year deal that was announced yesterday. It includes 18% raises over 4 years, and that's a $620 million estimated taxpayer cost for those 4 years. The first year, the current year we're in, it's going to be a $200 million bump for those state workers in the AFSCME union. Illinois is a pro-worker state, the governor said, and when it comes to workers' rights, his administration, he said, is committed to ensuring that every Illinoisan has access to good paying opportunities. This contract, he said, represents a partnership that won't just expand our pool of state employees, it'll strengthen our state's workforce and provide opportunity for employees and their families. Now, you've got AFSCME, Roberta Lynch, the executive director of AFSCME Council 31 here in Illinois, saying that AFSCME members care deeply about serving their community. They go above and beyond to meet challenges like the COVID pandemic and staff shortages. She went on to say that this contract helps to address the toll that inflation has on state employee incomes and keeps health care affordable. So the AFSCME contract, hey, it's a win for the union members. And you had the contract that expired June 30th. A new contract was supposed to start July 1st, but it didn't come together until just yesterday when it was officially announced that a definitive deal had been reached. Not everybody's on board with this. You've got Illinois Policy Institute's Bryce Hill sounding off, saying that this is a deal that taxpayers are going to expect to have to pay more taxes for.
The private sector wage increases are not keeping up with this contract, which means taxpayers are going to see a larger share of their paycheck going towards subsidizing these pay raises in the AFSCME contract.
And Hill went on to address this issue in the taxpayer cost.
Taxes like the gas tax be automatically increased every single year. We've seen license and registration fees increase. We've just seen the constant nickel and diming of residents, and it's because of things like this that's going to continue.
So obviously there's that concern, but you got to pay state workers, and you got to pay them something that they can survive on, especially with growing inflation. But what about the concept of the generous benefits they get from the healthcare benefits they receive and the pensions that they will receive? Even former Springfield Mayor Jim Langfelder said this years ago when he first took office. He's no longer in office, but when he first took office, he said there does need to be a kind of righting of the ship, because back in the day, it used to be a public employee would take fewer dollars in their paycheck with the promise of great benefits in retirement. But even Langfelder acknowledged that it's now been the fact that, well, you get in with a public job, and in Illinois, you get paid great, and the benefits are great. And then when you retire, the benefits are outstanding, especially when it comes to Tier 1 employees. There's still questions about Tier 2 employees and their pension benefits and whatnot. But, here we are. Another 4-year contract with the state's largest employees union. And how were taxpayers treated in negotiations? Well, you could see, of course, $620 million additional additional cost on top of the $6 billion overall it costs for state employees. That's obviously a taxpayer cost that's going to be incurred. Stay tuned. We'll talk about the UPS contract that was agreed upon with the Teamsters and UPS. You guys are going to get some air conditioning in new vehicles. But what about safety concerns? Stay tuned. Interesting headline out of Chicago concerning a UPS driver getting shot in Humboldt Park. So stay tuned. We'll get to that. UPS averting a strike, coming to terms with the Teamsters union over a new contract. It's a 5-year deal. This is in the private sector. Previously, we were talking about the public sector, a large contract for state employee union members in the AFSCME union. This is a nationwide 5-year contract the Teamsters have with UPS, and it includes, 340,000 unionized workers. They're going to get higher pay. They're also going to get air conditioning in their trucks. After the start of the year, new vehicles purchased by UPS will get air conditioning. So that was seen as a bit of a safety provision. But the Teamsters calling the tentative agreement historic and overwhelmingly lucrative with the higher wages and a variety of other things. It's a 5-year deal. It includes equipping more trucks with air-conditioned equipment starting after January 1st of 2024. One issue was a sticking point, and that dealt with two-tier wages. And a lot of it was concerning like part-time employees not getting paid as much per hour as full-time employees. And the union said that was unfair. But members are going to be voting on this between August 3rd and August 22nd. So they averted a strike because they had an end-of-month deadline to actually get a deal together. So they were able to pull that off. But one headline here that I think is rather fascinating, it's comes out of Chicago. It deals with something I don't know if the general public necessarily thinks about, especially here in Springfield or elsewhere in more rural areas. When you see your UPS driver pull up, it's the same guy who was bringing your packages last week. You know each other, you wave, you say hey. But up in Chicago, a UPS driver was shot and wounded Tuesday morning in the city's Humboldt Park neighborhood, according to Chicago police. Chicago Tribune reports that the man was outside of a particular part of town at around 10:20 in the morning. This wasn't like, the dead of night. This was in broad daylight, 10:20 in the morning, when he heard shots and then felt pain in his back, police said. Though police would not confirm the victim was a UPS driver, a UPS spokesperson said in a written statement that UPS was aware of a situation involving a driver Tuesday morning. Man was taken to the hospital. Detectives are investigating. No one's in custody, though. The spokesperson for UPS said, "We're thankful that our driver is safe, and we are cooperating with the responding authorities in their investigation." Listen, I've heard horror stories, and maybe some of you who drive, commercial trucks for a living might have these horror stories as well. But, there's some areas of large cities that you might have concerns driving your big rig with what could be a very expensive haul through certain areas. And how do you protect yourself? Especially in those who are UPS drivers. You're driving around lightweight trucks with a lot of expensive merchandise at times, electronics, medications, a whole host of things, right? How are you guys being kept safe? Is that part of this overall conversation in the union contracts concerning safety? Because again, when you get a headline like UPS driver shot in Humboldt Park in the middle of broad daylight, this wasn't at 4 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't at midnight. This was at 10:20 in the morning. That a UPS driver was shot in Chicago. So maybe that'll be part of ongoing conversations. I don't know, what's the fix? Do you train UPS drivers to be like Brinks drivers, the armored cash carriers? Give them training with firearms so they can protect themselves in certain circumstances? That's an interesting question. I'd like to hear your thoughts. You can email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. All right, stay tuned. We got the Council Roundup coming your way next here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News.